It's Spoilerin time, folks. This show is built on the back of Cordkillers, but it's okay. It's consensual. On Cordkillers, we try to figure out how to watch stuff, and on this episode, we've watched it, and now we want to talk about it. This week, we're talking about Hannibal, episode 1 of season 1. It's our new library show, replacing the Larry Sanders Show. We're also going to talk about episode 3 of season 2 of The Mandalorian and episode 8 of season 4 of Fargo. I'm Tom Merritt. That person is Brian Brushwood.
Heck yeah. So what are we diving in with first?
Let's talk Fargo, episode 8, season 4, The Nader. Loy plays with fire. Josto wears his heart on his sleeve. Really, I don't know. These descriptions, sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not. This doesn't make me remember anything that happened
the
in the
opening
show.
scene,
but the main thing was
Josto making love with the nurse, our crazy psychotic killer nurse. The significant parts about this episode, the standouts. Orietta, of course, number one, finds out that she's been found out as a murderer and a poisoner, and it's only a matter of time till they get.
Well, it's not that she's been found out; it's that her latest victim, the head of the hospital, survived, and so that's when she goes and looks for the letter and figures out, okay, I think I know. I think this will turn against me. He's going to survive. I better get out of here. Right. That I know that putting a fine point on it. But.
Yeah. Like the reason she finds the handwriting sample that she pieces together is the person who wrote the letter is because she's panicked and is about to split town. And in the middle of grabbing all her goods to split, discovers the journal with the handwriting in there. The best part, star of the show, yes, it's a fine ending. It's the big action set piece at the end. Put a pin in that. That moment where Josto's brother, Gaetano, look at that. I even used the right name this time. Looks to be like, okay, here comes the obvious part where Gaetano's not dead, finds out that Josto betrayed him. This is the metaphorical vice that I told you. Oh, no. I fully thought Josto's dead. I'm like, oh, finally, we're getting to that part that I definitely predicted several episodes ago. And instead, genuine surprise, genuine shock, where Gaetano says, you betrayed me. You said the thing so the guy would kill me and you could take over. This guy, am I right? And it's like, okay, and now comes the bullet. No, now comes the knife in the back. No, now comes the genuine approval of somebody who is blown away by the guile and ambition of his brother.
Well, and I never thought Josto was going to die. I always assumed he would get out. At best, I thought it would like split the clan and Josto would escape with his guys, and there'd be a third party in this. I never expected the turnabout of Gaetano going, oh, I thought you were weak, but that I would never have thought of that. You are definitely not weak. You're the brains of the operation. I am ready to serve you because I'm just a grunt. That was amazing.
Well, and it was fun too to experience that moment when I feel like as the audience, we have Gaetano's number, but then when he unironically gets down on one knee and pledges himself to Josto, like even as the audience, I felt 100% moment for moment tracking exactly with Josto. We're like, is this a joke? Trick? What's going on here? Where are we headed? And then at some point I realized, oh my God, this is for real. And you could see on Josto's face, he's like, oh my God, this is for real. He's like, I'm like, Josto, say some good stuff. Blow everyone away. And sure enough, Josto starts talking like the freaking Pope, and everybody claps, and it was fantastic. They do explain what Loy meant when he said Fargo. I assume that's who he called in as the hit squad that we see later on that ends up taking out Josto and Gaetano's mother.
Ah, okay.
Remember he says, what do we do? Right. And he only says one word.
He says Fargo
and then commercial break, right? And so...
Yeah. And I assumed that meant, oh, this is the beginning of the connection between Kansas City in earlier seasons of Fargo and the actual Fargo.
When you said the word Fargo, I I guessed, and it turns out I was wrong, I assume, but like is he suggesting we retreat to Fargo? We say, peace out, this is yours, we'll go take Fargo. But then when the hit happened, I'm like, oh, he called in.
Oh yeah,
Fargo.
I immediately assumed it meant like, oh, we're finally making the connection. He's got a connection to the gang up in Fargo, and this is the beginning of a long and storied relationship between those two organizations. So I kind of love that already. You're right. They show up and kill Gaetano and Josto's mother. It was one of those situations where I'm like, man, I wish we'd been introduced to the mother a while back and,
so that
and really gotten to know her. But on the other hand, you can only play that card so many times. And we saw enough to know like, oh, they both love their mother. And it still worked. I still believe that they were, close with the mother, and that would be a horrible thing. It kind of doesn't take much to convince you of that when you say, hey, that's their mother. And you're like, oh, okay. Unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to assume they don't want her to be gunned down by a gang from Fargo.
We also had a brief beat between the funeral parlor mom and Loy's wife, where I'm not entirely sure where that heads outside of if there's any help given to them. It was as though that whole scene existed only to tell us, hey, if Loy's wife pulls any strings, you should know that that's very unusual and not something she would normally do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think you needed quite a bit of convincing to make sure that it's clear later on that if Loy gives her some guff about it, that she's like, I would never do this. But, I thought that was laying the groundwork. It might be laying the groundwork for a future alliance between those two characters. It also lays the groundwork for a further relation between Loy's son and Pearl. Because they're having what we know is a perfectly chaste and innocent conversation. But when mom discovers it, is like, you shouldn't be up here talking to my daughter. And that just sort of, probably sparks more ideas in their minds than it would have if she had just said like, oh, hey, your mom's here, head on down. So I think that's pointing in that direction as well. Also, we know, because of what we talked about earlier, that Orietta is going to be coming for Pearl. So it may be that is the favor that's needed, is to rescue Pearl from Orietta's clutches, perhaps. Who knows?
That's interesting, because Orietta doesn't strike me as, she strikes me as somebody who thought she was doing, quote unquote, the Lord's work, basically acting as a force of nature, delivering bodies to heaven. We've seen her a little bit cover her own backside by poisoning Dr. Harvard. Man, these names.
Also having an extramarital affair with Josto in the 1950s. Like, I don't know, I've never gotten the opinion that she's innocent at all.
Correct. But I have gotten the opinion that she's felt like she is not doing a personal or selfish thing with all of her work. Oh,
really? It feels like it's overplaying that. To me, it's like, I can justify this by saying I'm helping these people that would have died anyway, so that I can steal their stuff.
Yeah, maybe so.
Or it's more of a psychopath thing of taking trophies. But either way, I've never thought it was a higher calling.
Well, here's all I want to place my chips on is I don't think it will be as obvious as, oh, you ratted me out, I'm going to murder you, kid. I think it'll be something, intentionally bizarre and surprising that she tries to.
I will be bizarre and surprising. I think it will be entirely motivated by covering her ass and possibly some angry revenge. But yeah, bizarre and surprising for sure.
How did you like that ending?
Felt a little rails to me.
On railings.
A little on railings. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was entirely justified.
Okay. Oh, God.
I love the way it actually ended at the very end. I like that we had a stake for the girlfriend being killed, and that the aunt gets away. I like that. I like where we leave it. Right?
Totally expected.
And I think that's good, because she's already a loose cannon. Now she's a loose cannon without an anchor.
Right.
without anything to live for. And that's an interesting piece to have on the board.
Well, and plus also we have a messy narrative that could be written after the carnage. You could tell that's what emboldens our OCD cop to turn on Raylan in that moment. For some reason I thought
I think the OCD cop turned on Raylan because he's like, man, this guy just causes trouble for me. Like,
no. I assumed that's what he was working up the courage to go do, was participate kill
exactly.
Raylan. Right. Yeah.
But I think he just wanted to get rid of him. And when he got there, he's like, this is great. I can totally blame it on the rest of this stuff.
Yeah.
I just need to get there. Yeah.
I will say there was a definite surprise in that I thought for sure that our pair of outlaws would die together. I thought
so too. And that's why I was kind of pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, they're going to kill them both off and that'll be that. But yeah, I guess it's Zelmer. Is that the one that gets away? Swanee is the one that died though.
Yeah. I felt neutral about all of that. I felt, if I'm being perfectly honest, I felt bad because it looked like a very expensive shoot and I did not feel sufficiently expensively moved by it. Is that a weird inside baseball way to feel?
No. I think that's fine. It's not the way I felt, but I think that's perfectly
like I had that thought. I'm like, oh my God, they spent all this money and I'm not even feeling.
I'll say I have an equally questionable motivation for not loving this last scene, and that's because it was shot in LA's Union Station, which so many other things are.
So you've seen it a million times.
And it's not even that I've been there. I think I've been there once, but it's like, LA's Union Station, here we are again. And we're not in LA, we're in Kansas City. It'd be one thing if they were in LA. I'm like, okay, they're in the station. But I'm like, man, I've seen that place a lot. And it just kind of takes me out of it. And then there was nothing else to bring me back in until the very end.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, it didn't ruin the episode. Overall, a top-notch episode as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe one of my favorites so far. And I can't, it's got a little bit of kind of that The Wire thing where it's like, I never had an anchor to get started. It's just that I hung around long enough that suddenly I knew who everyone was. And as a result, this is the episode where kind of everything was clicking.
The payoffs.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do. And that's what I've been saying is I've been enjoying this whole season of Fargo because I've invested in 3 seasons of Fargo. If this was the first season, I wouldn't enjoy it as much. I'm almost certain.
Yeah. Whereas I was constantly looking for an anchor that, as of now, I realized was never there. Instead, as we've talked about, it just seems to be a chess game.
All right. That's Fargo, episode 8 of season 4. Let's talk about The Mandalorian, episode 3 of season 2, The Heiress. I have lots of opinions on this, but what are yours?
My opinion is that it, like all episodes of The Mandalorian, was exquisitely crafted, very well produced, seemed to be very good, well written, used good word talk. And the entire time I felt like I'm on the outside of something. These all feel like references to a thing that I'm on the outside of. And seems to me like the show was almost saying like, And I was like, okay, that's, yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is there were no references to anything. That was just all characters created just for this episode.
Okay. I know that's not true. But
no, did you know that was not true before watching it though?
All I knew is 2 words. Bo-Katan, is that a thing?
Bo-Katan, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because I feel like
I didn't go in wound up like ready to decide, but instead I was like, oh, Bo-Katan, that's the thing. That's a thing, I guess.
Okay.
And then
so you
later,
recognized enough to take you out of it. That makes sense.
Well, and then there was definitely a moment later on where it's like, make sure to find, I guess, a future person, which I know we even covered on the casting at some point, the Clone Wars, Twilight, somebody or other.
But I guess what I'm asking is, if you didn't know those were names from another Star Wars property, I don't know that they would have bugged you. Because especially at the end, if someone's like, I need to find the Jedi to get the child, and the character says like, go to this person next, you'd be like, okay, because that's what happened at the end of last episode.
You know what?
Last episode they said go to this place. So the only difference is that's a name that I know from other stuff.
No, you know where I felt it? Like that's intellectually, those are the labels. Where I felt it was in the prominent placement of Starbuck as that Bo-Katan character. Like, because I knew Starbuck, I was like, well, even if they act like this is not an important person, this is definitely, this is cast.
But I mean,
like
Giancarlo Esposito is just as high profile as Katie Sackhoff.
Yes, and is a very important character to the series.
But he's not a character we know from anything else.
That is correct. But when he shows up, you know he is a capital, very important character,
right?
Similar to this, and so
sure.
But yeah,
I'm just saying.
All I'm saying, it was very good from beginning to end. It just wore on its sleeve that that there's more happening. That
I don't think it did, and I have other people who didn't know anything about this episode that thought it was great and didn't realize that there was other stuff in it. That's the only reason I'm pushing you a little. Is did you just feel that way, which is perfectly legitimate, or was it because you kind of knew it had stuff and therefore that stuck out more?
I mean, all I knew is that there was a name, and then that name was paired with a very prominent, talented actor who I recognize from another franchise, and then a bunch of people saying things in a way that didn't advance the plot, but just smelled like that's something you would say if you wanted to reference a bunch of things outside of what's happening right here.
I disagree. I really disagree, but I have no leg to stand on in disagreeing because I know all of the things they're referencing.
Right.
This is Star Trek Lower Decks. Except you're on the
I'm
Bryce
Bryce,
side,
and I have no idea what it is.
Because I looked at it, I was like, oh, this story works without knowing anything else because all they say are things that work in universe for the Mandalorian. And so I'm trying to pin down, like, am I wrong about that? Was there something where I'm like, oh yeah, that was egregious? I just don't think there was. I think it's because you knew there was another thing that it felt that way.
And again, maybe we'll dial down the perceived outsidiness. Like, it wasn't that I thought it was a bad episode by any stretch. It was a very good episode. Sure. It was just, imagine watching a very good episode and then imagine watching a very good episode and being vaguely aware that you're on the planet Europa and there's Jupiter right over there. Like, that's what I felt like. Like, it's still a very good episode. I'm still on this ice planet. It's just that, I mean, are you feeling the gravity pull of, it seems like there's something over here.
I think somebody told you Jupiter might be there before the episode, and that's the only reason that you noticed.
Wait, and then also cast somebody of a prominent status.
And they cast Timothy Oliphant as Jupiter.
Exactly. Yeah. I did like the introduction of the idea that the Mandalorian is not a unified culture, but instead has splinter factions, and that maybe there's a reason, that there's not just one the way. I liked that.
Oh,
because it introduces
all of this other stuff aside, I adored the fact that they're like, no, only cultists don't take their head off. Like, you've been brainwashed. Or hat, not head.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm like,
cultists and zombies.
This is the way is Jonestown. Like, this is the way isn't preserving Mandalorian culture. It's actually like a perversion of Mandalorian culture. And he's been brainwashed, which now that I think about it, a group of people who go and take orphans from birth and teach them what to think. It's like, okay, all right.
What's funny is I thought of it from the different angle, which is like, so an excuse to increasingly see more of Pedro Pascal's face. All right.
All right. I also thought of that. I'm like, oh, good. Now they'll let him eventually get comfortable with taking his helmet off. But yeah, I mean, Mandalorians historically across previous franchises have taken their helmet off a lot. Boba Fett, I think, is the only one who never does in the movies, but he does in the Clone Wars series. So yeah, it was a little weird that they never took their helmets off.
Also,
and
Boba
so
Fett,
I'm glad that bit can die. Now it has a justification to die.
I always thought the bit with Boba Fett was that he wasn't a Mandalorian, but loved the flex of showing off that he had a Mandalorian's armor.
I'm gonna lore nerd out a little bit here, but Boba Fett, of course, being Jango Fett's cloned progeny,
Real-time son instead of like sped up microwave
means that he is from Jango's lineage, and we never quite know for sure whether Jango's actually Mandalorian or not.
Got it.
So yeah, I loved this episode, start to finish. Thought it was great. I love that they're like, oh yeah, this is the way. That's what crazy fundamentalists think.
I got
been brainwashed.
One very, very tiny beef is, I love the idea of in the same vein as the expanded universe. I love the idea that remnants of the Empire are surviving.
That was going to be the next thing I said. I loved let's revisit the battles on the Death Star on this barge, essentially, and have it feel like, oh yeah, this is a remnant of the Empire trying to preserve things. So it's going to look like the Death Star because it's from that era.
That was actually my beef. Is one of the things I loved the most about the very first episode was how, yeah, they were stormtroopers, but they had old, dusty, desiccated, poorly maintained, like very clearly this is an Empire on its last legs. Almost none of that emphasis was here.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have wanted them to hit that exact note again. What we got here was, here's a sole Empire trained person in charge of a bunch of people he's recruited who are clearly not up to the Empire standards. Those two people flying that thing are like, what? Like, what? You're going to do what? The guy who like, just close all the doors, like clearly not like the cool, calm Empire training. Like, this is a guy who has rustled up enough people to man this thing and get it back to the one Death Star that's still around in that sector, was my impression.
This is where I get to lore nerd out. And I think what you're describing is exactly what I would love to see. It was one of my favorite parts of the second Timothy Zahn set of books, where Admiral Pelion is the last badass of the Empire, and he intentionally sends his TIE fighters to do whatever maneuver just to test them, and he's just like, this is a joke. You guys are a joke. All of y'all are jokers. I would have loved to have seen kind of some more of that stuff from this one.
Sure.
Like there's one guy who's bothering to polish the brass on all of this, and he's disgusted at the state of their once great empire. And right now, that's certainly implied. It's certainly evident in the actions this guy takes. I just would have loved to have soaked in that. But to be honest, from a storytelling perspective, I don't know how you do that, but also tell the important A story of the other Mandalorians.
I did like, 4 Mandalorians doing a pirate attack.
Badass, man. They looked unstoppable. Yeah. It was pretty great.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I liked the fact that they had to save him twice to convince him, because he's brainwashed and he doesn't want to come to terms with the fact that he's brainwashed, but they get it. And of course, the topic that Brian and I were dancing around at the beginning is that Bo-Katan is a character from both Clone Wars and Rebels. And she is related to the people who historically ran Mandalore, and in fact was in charge of Mandalore for a while. So, I don't know if they're going to work that in more, but she is incredibly important and very credible when it comes to, no, this is what Mandalore is about. Also, she was a part of let's return Mandalore to its roots. Let's make Mandalore great again, Death Watch group. And our Mando is a part of the Children of the Watch. Bo-Katan has left Death Watch, and he is part of the Children of the Watch. So I think there's some lineage there. And of course, at the very end, they send him to find Ahsoka Tano, who was Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, who left the Jedi during the Clone Wars and sort of struck out on her own. So she is Jedi trained, but not a Jedi, sort of just kind of out on her own.
There was also a moment that was sort of a reminder. What are we, 11 episodes in now? Where it's like,
chapter 11, right?
They felt the need to remind us, like, this child is my charge. He's the MacGuffin for a single gig.
They've been doing that every episode. What? I have been quested to return the child. Like, that's never gone away.
Correct. But it's now been long enough that I'm like, all right, I mean, how important is this one gig in a world where your ship's now destroyed, patched together, barely limping along? Like what's the paycheck on this one?
I don't know. When you're raised in a cult, you'll do all kinds of weird things.
Well,
right?
and maybe that's an important thing that they have to sort of emphasize at this point, like a steadfast, insane dedication to a gig. Because I did not perceive that he had the same dedication to, the lady whose eggs the kid kept eating,
Yeah, not part of his quest. He hasn't been quested to her. He's just hired. So that's a whole different thing. I did like that the squids got revenge on the child by almost eating the child's face.
Okay.
Revenge of the squids. Any other thoughts on The Mandalorian 203?
No, continues to be great.
Yeah, I agree. That is The Mandalorian, The Heiress, episode 3 of season 2. All right, let's talk about our very first episode of the new library watch, Hannibal. Starring what may be future Harry Potter star Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter.
What is the accent he's doing?
I think it's his native accent,
which is
some kind of Scandinavian.
Cannibal.
I'm looking to put it down.
Okay.
He was born in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Got it. Okay. Very, very attractive. Very simple conceits. I like the fact that we don't meet Hannibal Lecter until just over halfway through. Could not stop thinking of the imaginary pitch meeting in which somebody said, okay, a buddy cop drama, only it's Hannibal Lecter and a crazy autistic virtuoso. Also, neither one's cop. And then also one of them secretly eating people.
Also, neither one of them are buddies.
Right, exactly. So things I predict based on the first episode. Of course, all of these are going to be completely wrong. Number one, we don't stay buddy cop for very long. I think that we've spent enough time that the two of them know each other. I think we're going to find an excuse to see Hannibal no longer be working with, I've forgotten our main character's name, probably not a good sign.
Will Graham.
Will, got it. Will continue to be our hero, and I don't know, maybe at the end of season 1, he figures out that maybe it's Hannibal. That's all I got.
Well, because there's a lot of teases in this of like the person you're describing, any of us who've seen Silence of the Lambs or Red Dragon know is Hannibal Lecter, right?
Yeah.
And this thing's based on Red Dragon. So I guess if you've read Red Dragon, which I haven't, you know everything that's about to happen. But yeah, I mean, it's clear to me that they're setting up like, oh, you know who Will Graham would be really good at catching? Hannibal Lecter. And Hannibal Lecter being right next to him to mislead him, right? To be able to throw him off the scent of himself while helping him seems to be the interplay here. And of course, you may have noticed that a secret rule of all of our library watches is the first episode of the next one must star someone who was in the last episode of the last one. And there we are. Scott Thompson shows up as an FBI guy.
It was so funny because I saw the two of you texting about it. I saw something Larry Sanders crossover, and I'm like, wonder what they're talking about. And I looked up, and within a minute, there he was on the screen. I was like, all right.
There he is.
On that scene, I liked how understated, like they didn't hit you over the head with the fact that copycat killing was straight up like, okay, that's the one that was Hannibal, and that's just because he had 20 minutes to spare and he's magic. And he did it intentionally to mess with Will, and Will recognized the feint in there.
I like that it wasn't just to mess with him; it was also to help him. Like it was both.
Correct.
Correct. Because Will says himself, like, I wouldn't have solved it if it hadn't been for this copycat.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you like the show?
I don't yet.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What?
Oh my God. Can I tell you? I don't like this type of show, but I like everything I saw from a production and a storytelling standpoint. I believe I will like this show, but I'm not. I'm probably more into it than you are at this point, Tom.
Maybe. Yeah.
But yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. for sure. Like I get that everybody talks about how well it's shot, and for broadcast television, it's gorgeous. I love Lawrence Fishburne in anything, so I was pleased to see him as one of our characters.
You say anything, but have you seen Predators?
Yeah, I even liked him in that.
Ugh.
I mean, you know the movie Passenger with Chris Pratt and
yeah.
I even like him in that.
Okay,
I just like Lawrence Fishburne. Like that'll help me get through anything.
Cowboy Curtis?
It's like, huh?
In Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I like that. It was fun seeing Scott Thompson show up. I get it. I love Mads Mikkelsen. I think he's captivating as he's a very interesting Hannibal Lecter. But I really felt like this was plotting. I was like, can we just get to the good stuff? Can we get to the magical stuff that I'm, not quite expecting? And the only time I really got that was when it was clear that Hannibal had done a copycat and had a very complex motivation. Like it was both to help and hinder Will at the same time.
You didn't like the original opening conceit, the going back in time, the wiping away of like all the noise and chaos of a crime scene, going back to what it must be like in that moment?
It was fine.
Well, what's funny is I have a compulsion to grade this on a curve since it came out, 5 years ago or whatever?
Yeah.
Bryce, it seems like you really dug it in a way that maybe didn't immediately land with us.
I did really like it. I actually remember... I think I watched Red Dragon as a kid, and I think I read, if not Silence of the Lambs, one of the Hannibal Lecter books.
Okay.
While I was in grade school, so maybe I'm predisposed to like it. And also, it's like murder mysteries. I love murder mysteries, and I think the random element, which really is only sort of teased here, of like what is Hannibal's relationship to Will going forward, right? We have there's a long time in front of us on this show, and these two can't really work together forever, can they? That's not how that's going to work, obviously.
Right, especially since neither one is an FBI agent, and both of them were randomly assigned to assignment, yes. And then the supervisor wasn't even there, the two of them just, like, is that a thing that can happen? Is the FBI could just let two people who aren't FBI agents show up and solve a crime without anybody from the FBI?
Let me into your house to arrest you.
And then plug the guy like 8 times and point blank range.
You know what? Saying it out loud really does kind of shape things a little bit differently.
But I think it's interesting, and so it was actually really difficult for me to not want to go and watch the second episode, because the other thing is that it felt like an easy watch.
Yeah.
Which I don't.
It was. Yeah.
I don't always think like Larry Sanders was an easy watch too, but sometimes some of these shows are not easy binge-em-alls, and I thought this one was. So I am still a little tempered. I totally recognize the cautious approach, but I don't know. I guess having heard how great this show is forever, I think I was predisposed to like it.
And I suspect that we're only going to get, from what I hear, it's like, oh my God, the food porn, and then they're human body parts or whatever, whether they are or they aren't or whatever. But it's like, I don't really like food porn anyway, so definitely.
I thought that was well done in this episode. It might get old. I might start to like it. We'll see. I'm trying to get out of my own way.
Would you say an acquired taste?
Yes. Remember, the name of this episode is Aperitif, after all.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's when
I am trying to get out of my own way, because most of this episode I was waiting for Hannibal Lecter. I love mystery. I'm glad you said that, Bryce, because I love mystery stories too. And I didn't let myself get caught up in the mystery of this, because I was like, okay, but when's Hannibal show up? Okay, but wait, who's Will Graham and who's Beverly Katz, and how do they? There was a lot of work to like figure out the interactions of people, and I didn't enjoy the mystery as much because of that. I think that will go away. I'm perfectly willing. In fact, I expect that I will grow to like this more as the episodes go on. I am prepared for that.
Yeah. I don't see any way to have done otherwise, but this very definitely Monster of the Week episode to kick everything off. The majority of the spotlight is on a protagonist and also Hannibal Lecter. No room left for it's like, and anyway, this guy wanted to kill and rape his daughter. Anyway, moving along.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, a very weird wrap. But I don't know. Yeah,
I did,
you're right.
like
There's
the
no
fact
space.
that Hannibal called it a courtesy call. Like as if there's a code between cannibals. Hello, this is your cannibal courtesy call. My name is Hannibal.
Also, he's like, I thought the courtesy call was like, get out of there. They're coming to arrest you. And instead it was like, make sure to barricade yourself in and shoot everyone around you. Like,
You know what? Actually, he was neutral. He said they know. Which to human beings, the three of us, would mean get out of there. But to him, they did set up that the whole reason he was doing this was because there was only one thing he really wanted. So they know might be, to his ears, might sound like, hey, man, if you want to get that, now's your chance. This is the last chance. We're about to close the doors.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, good point. I'm a fan of the Silence of the Lambs movie. I read the Hannibal book. That was the sequel as well. So I'm in on the lore part of this. And I think it's way too early for me to really have a judgment about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're getting warmed up for the main course. I wish they had done something to indicate that that's how we should set our palate.
Right. Yeah. I like you say, I will acquire a taste for this. Perhaps I just need something to, cleanse my palate, some sort of a amuse-bouche.
Yeah. Weird. Episode
which is the title of the next episode.
Chianti, damn it.
He's sniffing coffee beans to cleanse his palate.
Okay.
He's gonna drink our drink. All right, that is Hannibal episode 1, season 1. Thank you all for supporting this show. It was a lot of fun for us to do. We hope it's a lot of fun to listen to as well. We know it is for a lot of you, and we really appreciate that. Spoiler time next week: Fargo 409, The Mandalorian 204, and Hannibal 102. Patreon.com/Cordkillers to get these episodes early. See you next week.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.